My name is Miles. I'm 20 years old, and I work as a marketing analyst at Hartwell Company, a mid-sized advertising firm in Boston. I've been with the company for 3 years, and while I wouldn't say I love my job, it pays well and looks good on my resume. My plan has always been to put in 5 years, then leverage the experience for a position at one of the big New York agencies. Ambition has been my constant companion since college, the kind that doesn't leave much room for relationships or personal entanglements. Which is why what happened during that Chicago business trip still feels like something that happened to someone else. Someone less calculated, less careful than me. It started innocently enough. Our creative director had landed a potential new client, a boutique hotel chain looking to rebrand, and wanted to send a team to Chicago to pitch our ideas in person. I was selected to present the data portion of the proposal, along with Ezra Martinez, our graphic designer who would showcase the visual concepts. I knew Ezra, of course. We'd been colleagues for nearly 2 years, though our departments rarely overlapped directly. He was well liked around the office, the kind of person who remembered everyone's coffee order and birthday. Tall, with warm brown skin, perpetually messy dark hair, and the kind of smile that made even the most stressed account executives relax a little. We'd exchanged pleasantries in the break room and collaborated on a few projects, but our interactions had always been strictly professional. Miles! Ezra had called across the office when the Chicago team was announced. Looks like we're travel buddies. Any allergies I should know about before we're trapped in a metal tube together for 2 hours? Just small talk and motivational posters, I'd replied dryly, earning a laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes in a way I definitely didn't notice. The day of our departure arrived with the kind of New England spring weather that couldn't make up its mind, sunshine 1 minute, sideways rain the next. I arrived at Logan Airport precisely 2 hours before our flight, as recommended, dressed in a navy suit that was professional but comfortable enough for travel. I spotted Ezra at the check-in counter, wearing dark jeans and a forest green sweater that made his olive skin glow. Not that I was noticing. "Morning, sunshine," he greeted me, entirely too cheerful for 7 a.m. "Ready to dazzle Chicago with pie charts and color schemes?" "As ready as one can be," I replied, checking my carry-on to ensure I had multiple backup copies of my presentation. "Did you bring the prototype brochures?" Ezra patted his messenger bag. "All here, along with enough snacks to survive if we crash in the Andes. Want a granola bar?" "I have chocolate chip." I declined the granola bar but accepted the coffee he'd somehow procured for me, black with 1 sugar, exactly how I take it. I didn't remember ever telling him my coffee preference. The flight itself was uneventful. Ezra took the window seat without asking, which would normally irritate me, but he spent most of the journey sketching ideas in a moleskine notebook, occasionally tilting it toward me to get my opinion on a design element. His creativity was impressive, I had to admit. There was an intuitive quality to his work that all the data analysis in the world couldn't replicate. We landed in Chicago on schedule, collected our bags, and caught a rideshare to the hotel. Conversation flowed easily between us, mostly about work and the upcoming presentation, but occasionally veering into more personal territory. "So how'd you end up at Hartwell?" Ezra asked as we watched the Chicago skyline approach through the car window. "You don't strike me as someone who dreamed of analyzing market trends as a kid." "Practical choice," I said with a shrug. "I'm good with numbers, and marketing pays better than most fields for someone with my skill set." "I needed a job with health insurance," he replied with surprising candor. "My mom got sick right after I graduated from art school. Hartwell was hiring, and corporate design isn't that different from the work I wanted to do anyway." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. The steady paycheck helps me fund my real art on the weekends. What kind of art? Mixed media, mostly. Collage, digital manipulation, some painting. I had a small show at a gallery in Somerville last year. I felt a twinge of embarrassment that I didn't know this about him, despite working together for 2 years. That's impressive. You should come to the next one, he said casually. I'm working on a new series now. The idea of seeing Ezra outside of work, in his element as an artist rather than a corporate designer, was strangely appealing. Maybe I will. We arrived at the hotel, one of the upscale properties owned by our potential client, and approached the check-in desk. The lobby was sleek and modern, with abstract art that probably appealed to Ezra's artistic sensibilities adorning the walls. Reservation for Hartwell and Company, I told the receptionist, a young woman with an immaculate bob and equally immaculate smile. 2 rooms under Miles Parker and Ezra Martinez. She typed something into her computer, her smile never wavering. I have a reservation here for Hartwell, but it's for 1 room, not 2. That can't be right, I said, frowning. Our office manager booked 2 separate rooms. More typing. I'm showing a booking made through your corporate travel portal for 1 premium king room, booked by. She squinted at the screen. A Sandra Whitman? Sandra was our new office manager, who had replaced our highly competent Diane just 3 weeks earlier. Already she'd managed to order the wrong toner for all the printers and schedule a client meeting on a federal holiday. There must be some mistake, I insisted. Can you check again? Or perhaps book us a 2nd room? The receptionist's smile turned apologetic. I'm so sorry, but we're fully booked for the convention this weekend. We don't have any additional rooms available. I felt Ezra step closer beside me. What about another hotel nearby? More typing, more apologetic smiles. With the convention in town, most hotels in the area are at capacity. I can make some calls, but... I glanced at my watch. It was already past 3 p.m., and we had a dinner meeting with the clients at 7. We needed to review our presentation and prepare, not spend hours hunting for alternative accommodations. We'll take the room, Ezra decided, surprising me. It's just for 2 nights, right, Miles? We can make it work. I wanted to argue, but he had a point. We were here to land a client, not quibble over sleeping arrangements. Fine. But I'm filing a complaint with Sandra when we get back. The receptionist, visibly relieved, handed over 2 key cards. You're in room 1217. The king rooms are quite spacious, and there's a sofa that's actually very comfortable if one of you prefers. Ezra thanked her while I was already mentally composing a scathing email to Sandra about the importance of double-checking reservations. The elevator ride to the 12th floor was silent, both of us contemplating the awkward situation ahead. When we reached room 1217, Ezra unlocked the door and stepped inside, whistling appreciatively. Well, at least it's nice, he said, surveying the room. It was indeed nice, spacious and tastefully decorated in shades of gray and blue, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the city. But my eyes were fixed on the single king-sized bed dominating the space. There was indeed a small sofa by the window, but it was clearly designed for sitting, not sleeping, barely 5 feet long and narrow. I'll take the sofa, we both said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. Don't be ridiculous, Ezra continued. You're taller than me. You take the bed. By like an inch, I countered. And you need to be well rested for the presentation too. Rock, paper, scissors for it? He suggested with a grin. I rolled my eyes but held out my fist. 3 quick pumps, and my scissors lost to his rock. Sofa it is for me. he declared triumphantly. We can switch tomorrow night, I offered, feeling guilty. We'll see. He tossed his bag onto the sofa and began unpacking his laptop. Let's focus on the presentation for now. We've got... He checked his watch. About 3 hours before we need to head to dinner. We spent the next few hours reviewing our pitch materials, Ezra sprawled comfortably on the bed with his designs spread around him, me at the desk with my data points and market analyses. Despite the uncomfortable start to our trip, we worked well together. Ezra had an eye for which statistics would have the most visual impact, and I found myself suggesting tweaks to his designs that would better highlight the client's strengths. We make a good team, he commented as we were wrapping up. Your obsessive attention to detail balances out my creative chaos. I prefer to call it thoroughness, I replied, but I was smiling. And your creative chaos is actually quite methodical when you look closely. He looked pleased by the observation. Most people don't notice that. Most people don't look closely enough, I said, then felt oddly self-conscious, as if I'd revealed something personal. We headed to dinner with the clients, the hotel chain's marketing director and 2 executives, at an upscale steakhouse a few blocks from our hotel. The conversation was pleasant but clearly evaluative. They were sizing us up as much as our ideas. Ezra charmed them effortlessly, his passion for design evident as he described his vision for their rebranding. I provided the logical backbone for his creative concepts, explaining how our approach aligned with market trends and consumer behavior patterns. By the time dessert arrived, I could tell we'd made a positive impression. The marketing director was asking specific questions about implementation timelines, always a good sign. We walked back to the hotel together, the night air crisp with early spring. That went well, Ezra said, loosening his tie. He'd changed into a charcoal suit for dinner, and I'd been trying not to notice how well it fit him all evening. They practically started planning the rollout schedule over crème brûlée. Don't count the client before it's signed, I cautioned, but I was feeling optimistic too. The actual presentation tomorrow is what matters. Always the pragmatist, he said, nudging my shoulder with his. But admit it, we nailed the dinner. We did, I conceded. Your mock-ups for the lobby signage particularly impressed them. His smile was warm in the glow of the streetlights. And your breakdown of their current demographic versus potential growth markets. Did you see their faces when you showed that graph? We were still discussing the dinner as we entered our room, the initial awkwardness of the shared accommodation forgotten in the glow of professional camaraderie. That is, until it was time to get ready for bed. Do you want the bathroom first? Ezra asked, grabbing a toiletry bag from his suitcase. Go ahead, I said, suddenly acutely aware of the intimacy of our situation. While he was in the bathroom, I changed quickly into sleep pants and a t-shirt, then busied myself reviewing notes for tomorrow's presentation. When Ezra emerged in gray sweatpants and a faded black t-shirt with the logo of a band I didn't recognize, his hair damp from the shower, I determinedly kept my eyes on my laptop screen. All yours, he said, gesturing to the bathroom. By the time I finished my own nighttime routine, Ezra had arranged the small sofa with the extra blanket from the closet and one of the bed pillows. That doesn't look comfortable, I observed, feeling a renewed surge of guilt. Are you sure? It's fine, he insisted. I've slept in worse places during my starving artist phase. Remember, I won fair and square. I climbed into the king bed, which felt absurdly large for one person, while Ezra contorted himself onto the sofa, his feet hanging over the armrest. Good night, Miles, he said, reaching over to turn off the lamp on his side of the room. Good night, I replied, switching off my own light. Despite my exhaustion from the travel and the dinner, sleep eluded me. I was acutely aware of Ezra's presence across the room, the occasional rustle as he shifted position on the too small sofa. After about 20 minutes of silence, I heard a muffled groan. "You okay?" I asked into the darkness. "Fine," came his reply, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Just trying to convince my spine that this is an acceptable sleeping surface." I sighed, sitting up and switching my lamp back on. "This is ridiculous. The bed is enormous. We're both adults. Just come sleep on this side." There was a pause, and I could make out his silhouette as he propped himself up on one elbow. "You sure? I don't want to make you uncomfortable." "What's uncomfortable is listening to you suffer all night and then watching you try to present tomorrow with a herniated disc," I said firmly. "Get in the bed, Ezra." He didn't need to be told twice. With a grateful sigh, he abandoned the sofa and slid under the covers on the opposite side of the king bed. There was a good 3 feet of space between us, but I was still inexplicably aware of his presence, the slight dip in the mattress, the faint scent of hotel shampoo, and something uniquely him. "Thanks," he said quietly. "I owe you one." "Just don't snore," I replied, trying to keep my tone light as I switched off the lamp again. "No promises," he chuckled, and the sound did something strange to my chest. I lay awake for a long time after that, hyper-conscious of the man breathing steadily a few feet away. It had been a while since I'd shared a bed with anyone. My last relationship had ended almost a year ago, a mutual decision when my then-boyfriend accepted a job in Seattle. We'd tried long distance for about 3 months before admitting it wasn't working. Since then, I'd been focused on work, telling myself romance could wait until I'd achieved my career goals. Eventually, fatigue overcame my racing thoughts, and I drifted off to sleep. I woke to sunlight streaming through a gap in the curtains and the disorienting awareness of not being alone. Sometime during the night, the careful distance between Ezra and me had disappeared. He was curled toward me, one arm flung across the space between us, his fingertips just brushing my side. His face was soft in sleep, long lashes casting shadows on his cheeks, his perpetually mussed hair even more chaotic against the white pillowcase. I should have moved away immediately. Instead, I found myself studying him, noticing details I'd never allowed myself to observe before, the slight cleft in his chin, the faint scar near his right eyebrow, the way his lips parted slightly as he breathed. As if sensing my scrutiny, his eyes fluttered open, dark and momentarily confused. When he registered my face so close to his, he smiled, a slow, unguarded expression that hit me with unexpected force. "Morning," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "Did I cross the border? Sorry." He withdrew his arm, creating distance between us again, and the moment shattered. We both sat up, suddenly awkward. "I'll shower first, if that's okay," I said, already moving toward the bathroom, needing space to collect myself. "Sure," he agreed easily. "I'll order some breakfast." The hot water helped clear my head. What was wrong with me? This was Ezra, my colleague, here on a business trip. The fact that I'd noticed he was attractive was meaningless. Lots of people were attractive. It didn't have to be complicated. By the time I emerged, dressed in my presentation suit, Ezra had ordered room service, coffee, pastries, and fruit, and was sitting at the small table by the window, scrolling through his phone. "Perfect timing," he said, looking up with a smile that betrayed no hint of awkwardness. "Food just arrived." Breakfast was surprisingly comfortable, our conversation returning to the presentation ahead and last-minute adjustments to our pitch. If Ezra was affected by our nighttime proximity, he showed no sign of it. I told myself I was relieved. The presentation itself went even better than expected. Ezra's designs captivated the client's team, and my data provided the substantive backbone they needed to justify the investment. By the end of our hour-long pitch, the hotel executives were discussing implementation details rather than whether to proceed, the surest sign of success. "Congratulations," the marketing director said, shaking both our hands as the meeting concluded. "Your team has impressed us. We'll need to review the full proposal with our board, of course, but I think you can expect good news soon." We practically floated back to our hotel room, high on success and relief. "We did it!" Ezra exclaimed as soon as the door closed behind us. In a surge of exuberance, he grabbed me by the shoulders and pulled me into a quick, hard hug. "They loved it!" I stiffened momentarily in surprise, then found myself returning the embrace, caught up in his infectious excitement. "They did. Your designs were perfect." He pulled back, but his hands remained on my shoulders, his face alight with triumph and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Your data analysis sealed the deal. Did you see their faces when you showed the ROI projections?" We were standing very close, his hands warm through the fabric of my suit jacket, his eyes bright with shared victory. Something shifted in the air between us, the professional camaraderie transforming into something more charged, more personal. "Ezra," I said, not sure what I wanted to follow his name. His smile softened, and one hand moved from my shoulder to my tie, adjusting it slightly though it didn't need fixing. "We should celebrate. Dinner somewhere nice?" "My treat." "You don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted. "Unless you'd rather order room service and watch bad hotel TV?" The thought of spending another evening with Ezra, away from the constraints of work, was both appealing and terrifying. "Dinner sounds good," I heard myself say. His smile widened. "Great. I know just the place. A friend from art school works at this amazing restaurant in River North. I'll see if he can get us in." A few phone calls later, we had a reservation at an upscale Mexican restaurant that apparently had a months-long waiting list. Ezra's friend had not only secured us a table but promised the full VIP treatment. "Is there anyone you don't know?" I asked as we prepared to head out. "First the clients, now restaurant connections." He laughed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture I was beginning to recognize as a sign of mild embarrassment. "I just like people. And I keep in touch. A foreign concept to an introvert like me," I said dryly. "You're not as introverted as you pretend to be," he observed, surprising me. "You're just selective about who gets past your professional armor." The comment was too perceptive for comfort, so I deflected with a glance at my watch. "We should go if we want to make that reservation." The restaurant was everything Ezra had promised, elegant but not stuffy, with colorful art adorning the walls and the most delicious upscale Mexican cuisine I'd ever tasted. His friend Miguel, one of the sous chefs, came out to greet us personally and insisted on sending special dishes to our table. "So, how long have you two been together?" Miguel asked as he delivered a dessert we hadn't ordered, some kind of deconstructed tres leches cake that looked like an edible work of art. I nearly choked on my mezcal. "We're not, we work together," I explained hurriedly. Miguel raised an eyebrow, looking between us. "Oh, sorry. The way Ezra described you on the phone, I just assumed." "It's a business trip," Ezra clarified, though his cheeks had taken on a slight flush that wasn't from the alcohol. "We just landed a big client, and we're celebrating." "Ah, got it," Miguel said with a knowing smile that suggested he didn't believe us at all. "Well, enjoy the dessert. On the house for my old friend and his colleague." After he left, an awkward silence fell between us. I focused intently on the dessert, which was indeed exceptional. Sorry about that, Ezra finally said. Miguel has always had an overactive imagination. It's fine, I said, though I was curious what exactly Ezra had said about me on the phone to give his friend that impression. This cake is amazing. The moment passed, and conversation resumed, drifting from work to more personal topics. I learned that Ezra had grown up in New Mexico, the son of a high school art teacher and a civil engineer. He'd come to Boston for art school and never left, falling in love with the city despite the weather. I found myself sharing more than I usually did with colleagues, about my Connecticut childhood, my parents' expectations that I'd become a doctor or lawyer rather than a marketing person, my quiet passion for architectural photography that I pursued on weekends. You should show me your photos sometime, Ezra said as we walked back to our hotel, the night air crisp but not unpleasant. I bet they're good. They're amateur at best, I demurred. I doubt that, he said with surprising conviction. You have an eye for detail and structure. It probably translates well to photography. The casual confidence he had in talents he'd never even seen was both flattering and disconcerting. Did he pay this much attention to everyone, or was I special in some way? Back in our hotel room, the awkwardness of the previous night had dissipated, replaced by a comfortable familiarity born of shared success and an evening of conversation that had ventured beyond professional boundaries. We moved around each other with ease as we prepared for bed, the routine already established. This time, there was no pretense of Ezra sleeping on the sofa. We both climbed into the king bed, maintaining a respectful distance but no longer treating each other like radioactive material. Today was a good day, Ezra said into the darkness after we both settled in. It was, I agreed, staring at the ceiling. Thank you for dinner. And for your work on the pitch. We make a good team. We do, he said softly. Better than I expected, honestly. What do you mean? I heard him shift, and when he spoke again, his voice had a confessional quality. I always thought you didn't like me much. You're so contained at work. Professional. I couldn't get a read on you. The admission surprised me. I've always respected your work, I said carefully. Respect isn't the same as liking, he pointed out. I know. I hesitated, then decided honesty was called for. I think I kept my distance because I found you distracting. There was a pause, and I could almost feel him processing my words in the darkness. Distracting how? My heart rate picked up. We were approaching dangerous territory, but something about the darkness, the distance from our regular lives, made me brave. You're very charismatic. People are drawn to you. It's intense sometimes. People or you? He asked quietly. Both, I admitted. The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. I heard him take a deep breath. Miles, can I tell you something? Of course. I specifically requested to be on this pitch with you. I told Diane before she left that we'd work well together. This was news to me. Why? Another pause. Because I've been trying to get to know you better for months, but you always keep me at arm's length. I thought maybe if we were forced to work closely together. My mouth went dry. Why would you want to get to know me better? The rustle of sheets told me he turned toward me, though in the darkness I could only make out his silhouette. Do I really need to spell it out? Maybe you do, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed, a sound of both frustration and resolution. I like you, Miles. As more than a colleague. I have for a while now. The confession hung in the air between us, impossible to take back or ignore. My pulse pounded in my ears as I processed his words. Ezra liked me. Had liked me for a while. The realization made everything else shift into focus, his remembering my coffee order, his invitations to art shows I politely declined, the way his eyes sometimes lingered on me in meetings. "Say something," he urged when my silence stretched too long. I turned toward him, finally able to make out the contours of his face and the faint light filtering through the curtains. "I don't know what to say. I didn't realize. That much is obvious," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice despite the tension. "You're very oblivious for someone so analytical." "I'm not oblivious," I protested. "I just didn't think you would. I mean, you could have anyone." "I don't want anyone," he said simply. "I'm interested in you. Your mind, your dry humor, the way you pretend not to care but actually care deeply about getting things right. The way you help the interns with their spreadsheets when you think no one's watching. You notice that?" "I notice a lot about you," he admitted. "But if you don't feel the same way, I understand. We can chalk this up to travel confessions and never mention it again." The easy way he offered an exit only made me more certain I didn't want one. In the space of 2 days something had shifted between us, or perhaps it had been shifting gradually for months, and I'd been too focused on my 5-year plan to notice. Instead of answering with words, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. He made a small, surprised sound against my mouth before responding with enthusiasm, his hand coming up to cup my face. The kiss was tentative at first, then increasingly confident as we adjusted to each other. His lips were soft, his slight stubble a pleasant friction against my skin. He tasted faintly of the mezcal from dinner, and something uniquely him that made me want more. When we finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, he stroked his thumb across my cheekbone. "Well," he said, his voice husky, "that was worth waiting for." "Sorry it took me so long to catch up," I murmured. He smiled, visible now as my eyes had adjusted to the darkness. "I'm patient when something's worth waiting for." We kissed again, more deeply this time, months of unacknowledged attraction fueling a rapidly building heat between us. His hands explored my shoulders, my back, while mine found their way under his t-shirt to the warm skin beneath. The careful distance we'd maintained in the bed vanished completely as we pressed closer together. "Is this okay?" he asked between kisses, his hand hovering at the hem of my shirt. "Very okay," I assured him, helping him remove the garment. What followed was a discovery of each other that felt both unhurried and urgent, learning the contours of his body, the spots that made his breath catch, the weight of him against me. It was better than I could have imagined, partially because it was Ezra, someone I knew and respected, but also because of the connection that had been building between us, unacknowledged but undeniable. Afterward, lying tangled together in the now thoroughly disheveled king bed, Ezra traced patterns on my chest with his fingertips. "So," he said conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather rather than the significant shift in our relationship, "how does this fit into your 5-year plan?" I laughed, the sound rumbling through my chest under his hand. "It doesn't. Not at all." "Going to revise the plan, then?" There was a hint of vulnerability in the question that touched me. I considered it seriously. My carefully plotted career trajectory had never included falling for a colleague, especially not one who lived and worked in the same city I was planning to leave. But the thought of not exploring whatever this was between us seemed suddenly like a far greater loss than delaying my move to New York. "Some plans are meant to be revised," I said, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "Especially when better opportunities present themselves." His smile was worth every potential complication we would face when we returned to Boston. The HR paperwork, the office gossip, the logistics of dating a colleague. For the first time in years, I was genuinely excited about an unplanned development. "So," Ezra said, his expression turning mischievous, Should we send Sandra a thank you gift for the booking error? Let's not get carried away, I replied, but I was smiling too. Though I suppose I could downgrade my complaint from scathing to mildly annoyed. Generous of you, he teased, then grew more serious. We're going to make this work, right? When we get back to reality? I pulled him closer, making a silent promise to myself and to him. Yes. Some mistakes turn out to be exactly what you need. My name is Miles. I'm 20 years old, and until recently, I thought I had my life perfectly planned out. But sometimes the best things happen when plans go awry, like being forced to share a hotel room with a colleague who turns out to be so much more. I don't know exactly what the future holds for Ezra and me, but for once in my life, I'm excited by the uncertainty.